It all started with a favor. Alina, my best friend of almost 15 years, was flying to Greece for her cousin's wedding and needed someone to house sit while she was away. I'd done it before. Her home was like my second home. Familiar, warm, full of laughter and memories. I didn't think twice before agreeing. What she forgot to mention, however, was that her son, Ian, would be there too. I hadn't seen him in over a year. He'd been away at university, engineering or business, I couldn't quite remember, and had grown up completely out of sight. Last I saw him, he was all shy glances, oversized hoodies, and headphones. But when I walked into the house that evening, suitcase in hand, and saw him standing in the kitchen, I froze. Ian wasn't a boy anymore. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a sharp jawline, tousled dark hair, and that casual, effortless confidence that only came with age. He looked at me, surprised at first, then gave me a slow smile. "You're house-sitting too?" he asked. "I guess we both are," I replied, forcing a smile. We laughed. We shrugged. We moved on. But inside, something shifted. The first night was uneventful. We kept to our own spaces. I stayed in the guest room and he mostly stayed in his. We exchanged a few polite words over dinner, nothing more. Still, I couldn't shake the strange tension in the air. The second night, it rained. Hard. The kind of relentless summer rain that drums against the windows and keeps you awake with its rhythm. I made myself a cup of tea and walked into the living room, curling up on the couch with a throw blanket. I wasn't expecting company, but minutes later, Ian walked in, barefoot, holding 2 mugs. "I figured you'd be up," he said, handing me a hot chocolate. "Didn't peg you for a tea person." "You remembered?" I asked, surprised. "Some things you don't forget," he said, sitting on the opposite end of the couch. We talked more that night than we had in years. About life. University. How strange it felt coming home after being away. He asked me about my job, my relationships, or lack thereof. And then he asked the one question I hadn't expected. "Why aren't you married?" I laughed awkwardly. "I could ask you the same. Why aren't you engaged to some sweet college girl?" He smiled but didn't answer. Instead, his eyes held mine for just a second too long. Something passed between us. I looked away. By the third night, the tension was undeniable. It wasn't just glances anymore. It was lingering presence. Silent pauses. A subtle magnetism drawing us closer every time we were in the same room. That night, I came down after a shower, wrapped in a silk robe over my nightshirt and shorts, intending to grab some water from the kitchen. I didn't know Ian was still awake, but there he was, lying on the couch, watching something on the TV with the volume low. He looked up. His eyes scanned me for a brief second. Not in a rude way, but in a way that made my skin flush. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "Just thirsty," I said, heading to the kitchen. He followed. Close. Too close. I poured my water slowly, trying not to react to the silence behind me. "You look," he said quietly, "different." "Different how?" "Older," he said, "but beautiful." My breath caught. I turned slowly. "Ian, we shouldn't." "I know," he cut in, "but that doesn't stop me from feeling it." He stepped closer, inches now between us. "I've had a crush on you since I was 16. Ian." "I'm not a kid anymore," he whispered. And then he kissed me. It was soft, careful, like he was testing the waters, terrified of rejection. I should have pushed him away. I should have reminded him that I was his mother's best friend, that I used to help him with his school projects, that I once babysat him when he had a fever. But I didn't move. My lips met his. And in that moment, the world around us blurred. The kiss deepened, became desperate. His hands found my waist, mine clutched the back of his neck. Every nerve in my body lit up. The years, the difference, the guilt, it all melted into the heat that consumed us both. We stumbled toward the couch. My robe slipped from my shoulder. He kissed the hollow of my throat. I gasped. Clothes came off, slow and reverent. There was no rush, no regret. Just a quiet hunger, long suppressed and finally free. He touched me like he had memorized the moment in his head for years. And I I let him. We collapsed together, tangled and breathless, hearts racing. He looked at me, really looked at me. And in that gaze, there was no shame. Only awe. I've wanted this for so long, he whispered. And for a moment I believed him. Morning came far too quickly. I woke up wrapped in a blanket on the couch alone. My clothes folded neatly beside me. He had already disappeared to his room. Reality hit hard. The guilt crept in slowly, but steadily. Like a fog I couldn't escape. What had I done? Alina's son. My best friend's son. How would I ever look her in the eye again? I avoided Ian all day. We barely spoke. I told him I needed to run errands, went out for hours, sat in a cafe doing nothing but staring out the window. When I got back that evening, he was waiting for me in the hallway. We should talk, he said. I didn't want to, but I nodded. We sat on the edge of the bed in the guest room. I'm not sorry for what happened, he said. Are you? I stared at my hands. I don't know what I am. I'm not expecting anything. I just don't want you to pretend it didn't mean something. I looked at him then. The sincerity in his eyes was overwhelming. I need time, I whispered. Take all the time you need, he said. Then he kissed my forehead, softly, and walked away. I left the next day. Alina returned 2 days later, glowing from her trip, oblivious to what had happened in her absence. We met for lunch that weekend. I pretended everything was fine. We laughed, gossiped, and talked about her cousin's wedding. I smiled when she mentioned Ian, nodded along when she said he seemed more mature lately. I felt like a liar, because how could I tell her the truth? How could I confess that, while she was away, I had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed? Weeks passed, then a month, then 2. I buried myself in work, kept busy, tried to forget. But I couldn't. Late at night, I still felt his hands, still heard his voice in my ear, still remembered the way he looked at me like I was the only thing that ever made sense. Then one evening, I received a message. Still thinking about that night. Still thinking about you. It was Ian. I stared at the text for a long time, heart thudding in my chest. He hadn't moved on. Neither had I. Me too. I finally typed back. But I don't know what to do. We met at a quiet cafe the next day. He looked older somehow. Tired. But when he smiled, it was like no time had passed. I don't want to hide forever, he said. It's complicated, I replied. I'm not asking you to make a decision today, he said. But I need to know if what we shared meant as much to you as it did to me. I looked at him, and the answer was clear. Yes, I said. It did. We didn't kiss that day. We didn't touch. But something shifted between us again. Something stronger than guilt. Something more stubborn than fear. Hope. We started seeing each other in secret. Coffee meets. Long drives. Stolen weekends in places no one would recognize us. We talked about everything, about the past, the risks, the future. Every moment together felt like walking a tightrope. One wrong move, and everything could crash. But with him, I felt alive again. Loved. Wanted. Understood. Still, we knew the truth would have to come out eventually. And that moment came sooner than expected. One afternoon, Alina called me, her voice sharp. Ian's been acting strange, she said. He's been quiet. Distant. Is something going on? I froze. She knew something. Maybe not everything, but enough to feel it in the air. I lied again. Said I didn't know. Said I'd check in with him. But when I hung up, I knew I couldn't live like this much longer. We either had to come clean or end it. That night, I met Ian at our usual spot, a rented cabin outside the city, away from prying eyes. I can't keep lying to her, I said. She's starting to suspect. She deserves the truth, he said. Even if it destroys everything. I nodded. Then let's tell her. And we did. 3 days later, I sat across from Alina in her living room and told her everything. Every word felt like a knife. Her silence was worse than yelling. Worse than tears. When I finished, she stood slowly. I trusted you, she said. I trusted both of you. I never meant to hurt you. I said, tears in my eyes. I swear. She walked away without another word. She didn't speak to him for weeks. But eventually, slowly, the silence began to fade. She didn't approve. She may never fully understand. But over time, she realized that love doesn't always make sense. That sometimes the most unexpected things are also the most real. Now, a year later, Ian and I are still together. It's not perfect. It's not easy. But it's real. We've built something that defied the rules, fought the judgment, and weathered the storm. Because love, real love, doesn't ask for permission. It simply happens. Even when it shouldn't. Especially when it shouldn't. And sometimes, it changes everything.